Ever wonder if your favorite monuments in Assassin's Creed Odyssey are real? Well, let's get an art historian's take. Alright, so in today's take, we're actually going to be looking at the bronze sculpture of a wolf that sits right next to the great altar in front of the Temple of Apollo. Now, this sculpture actually gives us an opportunity to look at a couple of different things. One being the literature that actually talks about Apollo and wolves, and then also lets us talk about stories that connect Delphi to wolves. So let's start with the stories about Apollo and wolves. So if we go back and actually look at Homer's Iliad, Homer actually gives Apollo a few different epitaphs. One of these epitaphs is actually the wolf-born, which is actually a really great reference. We actually see in later myths and stories that this could be connected to the fact that his mother was said to have been escorted by a pack of wolves about the time she was going to give birth to Apollo and his twin sister Artemis. Now, in other versions of the tales, we actually have it that Leto, his mother, is transformed into a wolf at the time she gives birth to the twins. So already we have stories that connect Apollo to wolves. Now, in addition to the stories that kind of directly tie Apollo to wolves, we also have stories that tie the wolves to Apollo's sanctuary at Delphi. So Pausanias actually tells us a story where wolves actually saved the inhabitants of Delphi by calling to them and leading them up to the top of Mount Parnassus in a great deluge. And so the people are very thankful to the wolves. Now, Pausanias also tells us that there's another story that involves a wolf that helps recover some stolen treasure. Now, if you're like me and you were running around the sanctuary of Delphi, looking at all the different treasuries, and you saw all these heaping mounds of gold, and you thought, it'd be really easy to just pocket some of this, run out of the sanctuary feeling like Mrs. Moneybags. So I loved when I came across this story in Pausanias who talks about someone actually stealing from the sanctuary. The person goes and hides all of this money in the mountains. The man decides that he's going to take a little nap, but unbeknownst to him, the Delphinians are going to get a little bit of divine guidance. And so a wolf, let's say, dispatches with the man at night and then runs back down to the sanctuary of Delphi and calls out to the people. He howls and howls and howls until the people start to make the connection between the wolf calling out to them and a divine omen from the gods. And so the people follow the wolf to the treasure and are actually able to recover this. Now the people of Delphi are so grateful to this wolf that they actually create the bronze wolf that we see dedicated here. Now this isn't the only reference to a bronze wolf that we actually have from the ancient world. We also have references that talk about the Second Sacred War. Now this is a conflict that actually will kind of foreshadow the Peloponnesian War, which of course is the setting for Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Now in the Second Sacred War, we have the Phocians who want to gain political power and control over Delphi. Delphi has been notoriously independent, though, of any other political influence. However, the Athenians have had a lot of sway in that area, and they're also allies to the Phocians, and so they kind of back the Phocians' play. The other Greeks are not as excited about the Phocians taking over control of Delphi, and so a few years later we actually have the Spartans who start to show up in some unusual ways. They start to make large-scale dedications at the sanctuary. Now, this is kind of strange because the Spartans are, well, shall we call it, notoriously Spartan about their dedications at Delphi. They also bring quite a large military force to Delphi in order to oust the Phocians. Now the Delphians are so grateful to the Spartans for having ousted this outside influence that they actually inscribe on a bronze wolf the Spartans' right to Promenteia. So that means they actually have the right to inquire of the Pythia before anyone else in their group. Now, of course, the Athenians aren't going to want to be shown up by anyone else, and then also they've got to kind of help out their ally here, and so they too send a military force to Delphi. They are able to help the Phocians gain control again, and because of this, the Delphinians actually give the Athenians the right to Promenteia and inscribe that on the wolf. But let's be honest, they probably didn't have too much choice at that point. in having to give the Athenians the right of Promendeia. So by about 445 BC, the Second Sacred War is actually over. Now we're not exactly sure how that shakes out, but we are told by Diodorus of Sicily that the Delphinians actually end up suing the Phocians for compensation in this conflict. Now, while that is important, I think we really need to be focusing on the fact that Sparta and Athens already see themselves as major players in the Greek world, and they're already kind of going tit for tat with each other. I think this gives us a lot of really good foreshadowing, given that the Peloponnesian War is just a few years off. So I hope you guys enjoyed learning a little bit more about the bronze wolf of Delphi, because it really is a great monument to have been added to the game, since it tells us so much about Apollo, it tells us so much about Delphi, and then it also does a really great job of foreshadowing the events that are actually played out in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. So I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I will see you guys next week.